just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Only just like the sunrise. You know that we're gonna light it up. Tonight, we're gonna light it up, babe. Tonight, we're gonna light it up. Just like the sunrise, we're gonna light it up.
Howdy, howdy. Welcome back, guys. It's been a week. It seems like it's been a longer than that since I've seen you guys. So welcome to our live show where we answer heating and air questions live. Usually, I don't know everything, so usually we're joined by a few other pros, and if I don't know the answer, one of them hopefully will. But hey to Gary, hey to Bob, hey to Steve, and hey to Ryan. Good to see all you guys. Wanted to start out tonight's show with an interesting story. It says New Jersey HVAC business owner accused of using drone to taint local pools with damaging chemical. And this is not that old of a story. Looks like it's about a little over a month old, and this story is out of Philadelphia. Actually, it says that the news organization's out of Philly, but the story is out of New Jersey. Authorities say the owner of a New Jersey heating and cooling business is facing charges after he allegedly used a drone to drop a damaging chemical into commercial and residential pools. Patrick Spina IV was taken into custody at his business, Comfort Solutions Heating and Cooling, in Galloway Township after investigators saw the suspicious drone in flight and followed it. Now, first of all, I want to just say before we go any further, everyone's innocent until proven guilty. These are allegations, and, so don't be coming after me for reporting something that's not true or anything like that. But I just thought it was a crazy, crazy story. A homeowner in nearby Absecon, I'm probably not pronouncing that right, Absecon, reported to police in mid-August that a drone hovered over their pool and dropped a chemical that turned the water an alarming shade of green. Police said several similar reports about a drone dropping a substance into pools soon followed, including an incident at the Quality Inn where the pool's concrete base sustained damage. Crazy. Authorities on Friday spotted the drone in flight over the Quality Inn and tracked it to Spina's business, where he was identified as the individual responsible for the ongoing incidents. The chemical being dropped was identified as sea dye, which is most commonly used by sea rescue services. Police say the use of the chemical is illicit and caused damage to the affected pools. Spina, who's 45, is facing multiple counts of criminal mischief, according to police. He was released from custody on a summons pending further court proceedings. So I just thought that was crazy. He owns a heating and air business, so that's why we're talking about it. But yeah, crazy story there. I don't know anything about this chemical. I don't know if any of you do. But, at first I was like, well, what's the big deal? I mean, obviously it's a big deal if you don't want it in your pool and the pool belongs to you. But I was wondering if it, was that big of a deal as far as the chemical goes. But it says this chemical is illicit and caused damage to affected pools. So crazy story there. What are your thoughts? Have you guys ever dealt with anything like that? Somebody using a drone, just to vandalize things. That is just crazy. So anyway, hey to Mark, hey to Emery, and Steve says it depends on how old it is, refrigerant type. He's answering Emery, who says, if my compressor fails, is it better to replace it or the whole unit? Yeah, I mean, I think, Emery, I would ask your contractor to price it both ways. There's a lot of variables to answer that question. And sometimes, it's not often, but sometimes one particular brand seems to like to discontinue parts. So if you can't get the compressor for one reason or another, that will obviously play a role in this. But I think that ultimately, you get your price. If it's, I don't know, $1,000 to put the compressor in, you decide, do I want to put $1,000 into this system that's however old it is, or do I want to replace the whole unit? Just kind of depends on what the parameters are there. Ryan says, getting ductwork done, adding a vent to a room with no airflow and dampers onto other rooms so I can manually adjust for heating and cooling seasons, since some in the house don't like AC and love heat. Yeah. It's interesting that you're having to get permanent work. Well, I mean, I guess you could call it permanent to a degree, right? Work done because some of the folks you live with like it a little warmer than you do, I guess. So that's, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do to keep the family happy, right? So anyway, yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. I wanted to talk a little bit about last week and why I wasn't here, and what I was doing. And what I was doing is I was invited by Daikin. Now, a lot of you know that I sell Daikin at my company at Griffin here in Virginia, and we've talked about them on a lot of videos. And everybody has their own preference for one reason or another, but as time has gone on, that's slowly but surely became the brand of choice for us. And so, Daikin has sponsored a few videos, and make a long story short, they had this conference, I guess you could call it, where they bring in prospective contractors that are considering becoming Daikin Comfort Pros. But, they're considering becoming a dealer. And so they invited me down to speak, and that was a lot of fun. I recorded it. I will not be putting it out there because of some of the information that was shared at the conference is proprietary and kept in-house, if you will. But I might show some clips of that trip in a upcoming video where, I talked to a lot about when I started my business, and I showed some pictures and got a few laughs from the folks there. So anyway, it was really cool, really humbling for those of you that haven't seen my show. I'm not a big deal. I started out, my life started out, I grew up in a trailer park. And, I went to school to be an electrician, and one thing led to another. I learned heating and air, fell in love with the trade, and, here we are. I own a heating and air business here in Virginia, and I decided to make a few YouTube videos, and the rest is history. So it was just kind of humbling to even be invited, much less to be a speaker there, and it was just a lot of fun. So that's where I was last week. I got down there. And the hotel that I normally stay at when I go to Houston, this was not the same hotel. This was a fancier, a nicer hotel, Francisco, sorry. Francisco says, I didn't see you. Francisco, were you there? Were you at the Daikin Be the Pro? And if so, were you there for the Amana or the Daikin part of it? But anyway, I don't even remember what I was saying, but I think ultimately it was just really cool to be invited and to be there for that. So anyway, back to your questions. Oh, Francisco says, I work for Daikin. Everything that I was there for was for the Be the Pro meeting that was at the JW Marriott down there. So I didn't come to the factory, even though some of the guys did. So I would assume if you work at the factory, Francisco, then I would assume that you saw them do the tour. And so I wasn't there for that. But anyway, Gary says, Josh, your show was up last week. 5 of us checked in and were waiting. Then the link went away, gone. I was wondering if you had technical issues. Yeah, if you guys are ever unsure, if you go to the community tab of the YouTube channel or to our Facebook page, I'll usually put what's going on. If I'm having technical issues, I'll put that. Last week I put no show this week, guys. I'm sorry. And that's what I was about to say. That's where I lost my train of thought. And what the train of thought was when I got to this, much more fancy hotel, the internet was really bad. I don't want to say it was like horrible, but it wasn't good enough for me to do the live show. And not that it's that great here either, to be honest with you. We've obviously had our issues, but it was it was shaky at best. And I just knew that if I tried to do the live show there, that it was going to, be a problem. So anyway, that's where I was last week. A lot of you guys join us every week, and you know that I'm usually here every week. And so, that's where I was. Ryan says, with the ductwork changes, what questions should I ask to ensure it works and corrects the room with airflow issues? Ask about CFM settings, or ask them to use a flow meter, anemometer, anemon. I ain't even gonna try to say that now. It's just one of those nights to use airflow. So Ryan, I do have I've got a little CFM airflow meter that I use, but I don't use it that often. Honestly, I use my ductulator more than anything else. But the fact that you're using manual dampers that are going to be opening and closing and affecting that airflow, then, that plays a role in all this as well. So, I think whenever you got dampers and you're pushing air from one space to another and things like that, that's going to play a role, and it's going to, it changes all this, right? So it changes how much CFMs that, you should be pushing. The thing about it is, I can't remember where you live. I'm sure you've told me before, but if you live in an area that gets hot in the summer and cold in the winter, then, you're probably going to be adjusting those dampers from time to time, because if it's a room that you spend a lot of time in and you adjust those dampers to push more air to your space to get more cool air, well then, then you'll get the heating, get to heating season and have issues. So you're in North Carolina, so a little warmer than where I am in Virginia, but still very, I'm sure you still have some cold winters, I would assume. Tech Junkie says, how do you know what size ductwork you need unless you do a load calculation? A load calculation will show you exactly how much CFMs you need, and then what size duct. That's true. But it sounds like you already have ductwork in place, and you're going to be affecting, what you currently have. And the other, I think the thing about it is, some of this stuff is just a little common sense, right? But Tech Junkie's completely right. If you've got a house and you get a proper heat load calculation done room by room, they're going to tell you, how much, heat loss or heat load each room is requiring. And that, will play a role in your duct sizing and so on. Ryan says they are coming tomorrow and I can ask. So yeah. I think that, Ryan, ultimately, if you've got a good company, I'll even say this, and you guys know that I don't say this a lot. I don't say this when it comes to heat load calculations. I don't say this when it comes to, Tech Junkie says, can you say I'm right a little louder? The wife's here. Ma'am, Mrs. Tech Junkie, the man is right. I mean, come on. Just get with it here. He is right. Anyway, but yeah, Ryan, I would say that, I will say that this is one of those times that just having a good company that gives you the warm fuzzies, that, they use a little common sense, a little bit of rule. I don't want to say rule of thumb, but experience. I've got a guy that works for me that it's like he's the duct whisperer. He can walk into a house and we'll look at the ductwork and he's like, oh, that this is going to be a problem. I've got a little restriction here or there. And he can almost darn near sometimes tell me what the static pressure is going to be before we even check it. And, that comes with just experience. He's been doing it as long as I've been alive. Right. Ryan says work order, add additional supply duct to guest bedroom, upsize flex duct to existing guest room vent, and damper installed on new duct feeding the guest room. Well, as they look at everything, I saw a video a few weeks ago where this guy from ACA, and I'm going to probably ruffle some feathers with some other pros on here, but that's okay. The guy said, and I think I talked about this on a recent video, the guy from ACA said, and I believe the comment was something to the effect of, ductwork cannot be oversized. That's what I believe. That's the gist of what he said. That may not be exact verbatim, but he said it like, oh, I've been doing ductwork for so many years and ductwork can't be oversized. And I'll kind of agree with him when it comes to return ductwork. As long as it's filtered correctly and you got, more times than not in residential, you can't oversize the return. But with the supply, I will disagree with him. And I'll tell you why before I lose you guys, before some of you pros come after me. Imagine if you had a straw, okay? And we're going to blow in that straw and we're going to blow air out the end of that straw, okay? And then we're going to close the end of that straw. So now I've got my finger on the end of that straw and we're going to start punching holes towards the end of that straw. So you get my analogy. We're talking about ductwork. And the holes we're punching are pretty small towards the end, right? And when you blow a certain amount of pressure through that straw, you're getting a certain amount of air that's coming out of those holes, right? So you've taken a needle or maybe something even a little bit bigger like a pin, and you're making, you've made all these holes and you've got your finger over the end of the straw and you're blowing and you've got this pressure coming out of those holes, right? Now I want you to take a pair of scissors and cut a gigantic hole in the side of that straw. You've got your long straw about this long and just cut a big hole out of the side of that straw leading down to the end there. So from about, a quarter of the way down to about a half of the way down to the straw, you're going to cut a big hole in the side of it. And now you're going to blow the same amount of air through there. You can't tell me that those ducts at the end aren't affected. They are affected, So anyway, hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. That's, I'm sure I'm ignorant, and the guy from ACA, if he ever sees this, he'll tell me how dumb I am and tell me why and whatever. But to me, that's a little bit of common sense right there. To say that the ducts that are closest to the unit, you can't oversize them. You can't oversize that. Of course you can. If you size them incorrectly, you are affecting the airflow for the ducts that are further down the trunk, and that's why you see guys that don't know what they're doing just willy-nilly adding ducts. Sometimes they don't even consider the fact that maybe a room that's not heating and cooling well enough, that they're not getting just enough return air, and has nothing to do with supply, and you get guys in there that don't know what they're doing, and they just start adding ducts. They just come off that trunk and they add a duct to a room, and they may even fix the issue in that room, but now the rest of the house is now affected, and it's not heating and cooling as well as it used to, or it's not dehumidifying as well as it used to. So that's my big stink as far as that goes. Anyway, you guys can tell me how I'm wrong later. Let's see. Tech Junkie says, yes, ductwork can almost never be oversized, especially the return. I agree with the return. Ryan says, they seem like a good company, but the owner is very busy to answer my questions, and I feel rushed. I'm one of those clients. It's from the company I told you about with the NC HVAC YouTuber. Ryan, feel free to share his channel. I think he's the one that you said if it all goes well, you'll share his info. So, feel free to do that. I'm sure if he's making YouTube videos, I would hope that he at least has, some wherewithal. He probably knows what he's talking about to a degree, right? If he's making videos, he probably knows more than me. I mean, let's be honest. Yeah, that's interesting. And in the owner's defense, maybe he is super busy and, maybe it's just not a fit. That's always possible, right? You feel like you just said, I'm one of those customers, and, you feel like you need a certain type of company to take care of you for it to be a good fit. It doesn't mean that they're a bad company or that they don't know what they're doing, but for you to get the warm fuzzies and know that they know what they're doing, or to explain to you what they're doing, you might want somebody that has the time or will take the time to talk to you and answer questions, right? So, that's legit. That's a concern. That's a legitimate concern. Tech Junkie also says you're only affecting the airflow if you don't have enough airflow, which they never do. Emery says, how do you know if airflow issues are related to ducts or other issues? Emery, I would say, Tech Junkie might get me on this one. And maybe Steve can comment on this. I would say the majority of residential airflow problems usually have something to do with the ductwork. Usually. And that's partly because a lot of the guys doing new construction, they're just rushing through. They're not doing things properly. They seal it. They seal it just fine. They install it and seal it and all that. But that does not necessarily mean that everything is sized properly, installed necessarily properly. And, that's why you might be having airflow issues. Tech Junkie says it's always the ductwork. Always. Ryan says, that's my issue, Josh. The room's closet to the furnace overheat and overcool my bedroom, doesn't get enough air. Ryan, check out my video where I talk about, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but basically I talk about whether your problem is a ductwork problem or a zoning problem. Okay? And that's the thing. Is your issue that you're having with that part of your house, is it a ductwork issue or is it a zoning issue? There are times, certain houses, if you're telling me, hey Josh, I've got a room that I want it to be cooler than other parts of the house. Well, that's a zoning. That's not a ductwork thing. That's a zoning thing. Okay. And the reason it's a zoning thing is, again, as we said, if you adjust the ductwork and you get more air pumping in there for the summertime, well, now it's, here we are a few months later and it's now about time to turn heat on. And now you're dumping all this warm air into the same space, right? So it's not a ductwork issue. It's a zoning issue. Tech Junkie says, dirty coil or incorrect fan speed, but it's still ductwork and filter size choice, which can never be too big. Let's see. Ductwork leaks 30% average. Francisco says most ductwork installed is undersized. I can tell you in Virginia, Very true. Very, very true. So yeah, pretty cool, Francisco, having you on here from Daikin. I got to tell you, another thing that happened is I got to talking to one of the folks there from Daikin, and they were telling me about some of the products coming out. And, I can't speak for all brands. I can't speak for the entire industry, but I got to tell you, I am excited about some of the stuff coming down the chain, if you will, the pike, of new products coming from Daikin. I don't want to say too much, because I'm not allowed, but there is one particular product that as soon as I'm allowed, we're going to be doing a video on it, and maybe several videos on it. I'll say this, because I think I'm okay in saying this. They've got a product coming that in America, we've never seen anything like it before. At least I haven't. Not here in Virginia. Nothing like it. And it's going to be great. And I don't want to get into all the specifics behind it, because I don't know exactly what I can and cannot say. But it's pretty cool what's coming. So I'll leave it at that. Tech Junkie says airflow should never exceed 700 feet per minute per second. You guys are getting way too technical now. Unless the ductwork is outside of the conditioned space, and then you need it to run as close as possible for that noise complaint reasons. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure as far as the context goes with that, Tech Junkie. At Griffin Air, we do, I would say the majority of systems that we install are inverter systems now. So we do a lot of the Daikin fits. We do some 20 SEER stuff, and we still do some single stage stuff from time to time for, budget friendly customers. But I would say that the majority of systems, Tech Junkie says, whatever the heck I just said. But when it comes to that stuff, I would say ductwork is still just as big of a deal, right? But it does hide a lot of these problems with these communicating inverter systems, just because they can ramp down and still keep the home comfortable at times. So the static pressure is not as high, and you simply don't have as much air being pushed through that ductwork at times. And I say that at times, right? There are going to be times when that system does ramp up and those issues really rear their ugly head. Ryan says, has Daikin talked to you about any new cold weather heat pumps? I know the government has an innovative for companies to make more efficient heat pumps with electrifications. So Ryan, I'm not allowed to talk about what I was just talking about, but I will just say they've talked to me about some really cool things coming. So I'll just leave it at that. So again, I don't know what I'm allowed to say. I specifically asked the fellow that was telling me some of this stuff, hey, can I do a YouTube video on that? Can I go ahead and do a video? And he said, no, I don't think we're allowed to quite release this. He's like, this is off the record is what he said to me. So, but it's some really cool stuff coming for sure. Let's see, we're at 9:00. We're going to do a one of our segments. Some of you guys, if you've never been on our show before, we do breakouts or breakaway segments where we'll do different things. We'll share news. For our segment, we're going to do a question for you. Tonight's question is not a goofy question. Tonight's question is, we've done segments. Those of you that have been on our show before, we've talked about goofy heating and air inventions. And my question to you guys tonight is, what is an invention, goofy or not? Goofy's cool too. As you guys know, I love goofy. But what is an invention that you think would be cool to see in the heating and air industry? Again, goofy or not, it could be a very serious invention, but what is something that you wish or you would love to see introduced? Now, Ryan, I think we already know what you're going to say because of what your last question was. But yeah, what's an invention that you guys would like to see introduced to the heating and air industry? How cool would it be if they were to introduce a heating and air system that drew no energy at all, right? I think we are close to that. I think we're starting to see some super high efficiency systems. And then, of course, with the pairing of, say, solar energy, we are very close, if not already achieving the ability to heat and cool your home, clean the air in your home, and so on, and actually use very little, if no, energy. So Arch says, how about a Daikin fit heat pump, package heat pump? Arch, I know we've talked before about the Bosch inverter package unit, and I'm just curious if, as you went through all the motions of talking to your local contractors, if that particular product ever did come up. I know at one point you said no, but I'm just curious if since then, if you ever cross paths with one of the folks that do install Bosch and install the Bosch inverter package unit. I'd be curious, to know if that ever popped up on your radar. Tech Junkie says an ERV with a heat pump, but they already have that. How about an accurate and actually smart thermostat? Yeah. That was one of the topics that came up at Daikin when I was there, about how a lot of these thermostats, they're not actually smart thermostats. They claim to be smart thermostats, but they are, I believe the exact quote that the fellow I was talking to said was, it's actually a dumb thermostat with a few smart features. And so I thought that was a good analogy, because a lot of these thermostats claiming to be smart thermostats, they don't even have the ability to do what a lot of thermostats even years ago had the capability of doing. And what I'm talking about is, I remember years ago, I don't want to say which brand because I could be wrong, but I think I know the brand. There was a brand that you used to be able to pull the thermostat off the wall and plug it into the outdoor unit and get error messages or error codes and things like that. And, I would say a lot of these thermostats today, they claim to be smart thermostats, but they don't even have the ability to tell you if something's wrong in some cases. And so now we do know there are thermostats that are out there that do that. And that's why we know that technology is possible, that some thermostats are able to notify you or your contractor if there is a problem of some type, alerts, error codes, and so on. But these other thermostats that are smart, that are just Wi-Fi capable with a few, energy saving features that call themselves smart thermostats, maybe they're not as smart as they, could be, right? I think that we're going to see, as we see companies continue down this path of communicating inverter technology. Okay. So we're continuing down that path. We're, drawing closer, to a world, a reality of that being what's offered the most. And because of that, folks are, going to be using the thermostat that is provided from the manufacturer, because that's what has that capability, right? The thermostats that are in Lowe's and Home Depot and all these other places that are 24 volt AC voltage technology, they're not going to have the capability to even work with these high efficiency communicating systems. And so because of that, I think that you're going to see some of these companies, they're going to be like Blockbuster. I'm not going to mention any names, but those companies that are just thermostat manufacturers, you're going to see them go away or shift gears and sell something else. Maybe not go away entirely, but have a very small footprint in the heating and air industry. And I think that that's just going to, as time goes on, naturally develop, right? As Redbox and Netflix came out, Blockbuster didn't pivot. They didn't come out with something new or better technology, and they eventually went extinct, right? And I think that's what you're going to see with thermostats over the next 20 years. Maybe less than that, but definitely over the next 20 years, you're going to see a lot of those brands. They're just going to, I think, I could be wrong, but I think you're going to see them just go extinct. Ryan says, thanks, Arch. It's called a residential cold climate heat pump technology challenge. So we're naming the challenge. I like it. Highland Enforcer, welcome to the show. What are your thoughts on the Daikin links? I did a video on it. I have not actually laid hands on one. But I would guess, just because of it being a non-communicating inverter system, I would guess that it's probably going to be very similar, have the same advantages and disadvantages that the Griflex and the Bosch non-communicating inverter systems have. I'll tell you another thing. I think that you're eventually somebody along this way is going to say, look, inverter systems are not all created equal. These non-communicating inverter systems are not the same as a communicating one. So, to just use EER or SEER, SEER2, all these measurements to try to compare the two, they're not accurately comparing the two products. It's like trying to say, what's the gas mileage on an electric car? Well, it doesn't burn gas. So you can't to compare it is not the same, right? And so I wonder, I don't know how they're going to do it, but they're going to at some point say, look, these are not the same. We need to have some way of definitively comparing, inverter systems, heating and air systems, and go from there. Ryan says, I think Ream, Train, and Carrier have too. Not sure about Daikin. I'm not sure what exactly you guys are talking about there. Tech Junkie says, to be honest, Daikin and all inverters should be grandfathered in, like Mitsubishi Hyperheat units. Arch says there are quite a few homes, either package heat pumps on the roofs or sides of their houses in Arizona. So there is a market for the Daikin Fit package unit. Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny that you keep calling it that. What you're basically saying is Daikin's inverter technology, but they certainly will be able to call it that if they choose. I just think it's funny that, Arch, you've already kind of told them that's what they're going to call it. Francisco says, what's your thoughts on the Daikin 1 Plus? When the Daikin 1 Plus first came out, I was pretty hard on it. I was pretty hard on the dial. I was pretty hard on several of the features. Some of those features have gotten better. They came out with that update that made the text larger, and so on. I will say, as we started to install the Daikin 1 Touches, I think those are, I like the Daikin 1 Touch, but we got to the point where we just installed the Pluses at Griffin Air, and there was a number of reasons for that, but I don't know if that answers your question, but that's ultimately, I would love for Daikin to come out with a thermostat at some point that is touchscreen and it looks more like a computer tablet than it does. And I know a lot of people would disagree with that. A lot of people want their thermostat to look very non-invasive. They want it to just blend in with the room. But I would argue that the Daikin 1 doesn't really do that anyway, right? And so I'd like for them to come out with something that looks, more like this phone right here, and, has the touchscreen, thermostat and so on. But, ultimately, I think that Daikin and all companies, they probably get more than just me in a room. They get a couple, consumers, and before they make these decisions, and when they're designing things, they They talk to folks, what do you like? What do you don't like? What would you purchase? What would you rather have in your home? And that plays a big role in a lot of the decisions that are made, especially when it comes to designing some of these things. Tech Junkie says, but why are we created new overpriced heat pumps instead of fixing houses the right way? More government. I'm not going to say that word because I don't know what YouTube would think of me saying that word. But I think that's a good point, Tech Junkie. I did a video where I said that a lot of problems like ductwork sizing or humidity issues, oversizing of the system, and so on, a lot of that is masked. It doesn't mean the problem has gone away, but it's masked a little bit when, communicating inverter systems are installed, because they are so what's the word I'm looking for? They're so, of course, if I wasn't on a live show, I wouldn't have any issues, but they versatile. They're so versatile, right? They can ramp down on a mild day. They're very versatile. And, so I think that's part of it, but I'm totally with you on that, Tech Junkie. If there's a problem with a house, let's fix the problem too. Just because you installed a system that's communicating it, like the fit. If you install a fit and it does help with some of those issues, it doesn't mean those issues went away. And it also doesn't mean that you don't need to fix those issues. I'm totally with you on that. Ryan says, what is that green drink you're drinking? I don't want to tell you because some of you guys are going to judge me, but I drink a lot of Crystal Light. I've never been I drink some sodas, but some of you guys are like, why are we listening to Josh talk about sodas? I drink some sodas and I drink, water sometimes, but my go-to drink when I'm just hanging out at home and I'm not drinking, alcohol or anything like that, if I'm just, having a meal, I drink a lot of flavored watered type products. And this one is actually Jolly Rancher flavored green apple. So it's okay. It's not my favorite. My favorite is grape, Crystal Light. So, I know that makes me sound like a tough guy. It's very masculine of me to say I love grape Crystal Light. Air Wreck. I like your name, pal. Ducts question. Do you like metal ducts versus mylar ducts to lessen sweating and mold possibilities? My ducts are in an unconditioned attic. Let me make sure that I know exactly what we're talking about here. Okay, so we call that flex duct. Okay, mylar. It's just not a term that we use here in Virginia a lot. I think to answer your question, Air Wreck, is I like flex duct just fine. I know what you're saying, but I think that there's times and places for both. I think if I have plenty of room and I don't have to worry about the ductwork being fabricated to go around a corner or to go up in a wall or to do this or to do that, and all I've got to do is just install ductwork in a house, and that is not, I have no challenges as far as I go. I have a nice, say, large crawl space to put my ductwork in, then I'm usually going to do round duct and round duct only because of the static and the other challenges that square ducts create. But I'm going to do a round trunk line, and then I'm going to, depending on the layout of the home, run my branch lines of flex duct off of that. But that's just how we do things in Virginia. There's other parts of the country that things are done differently for different reasons. In some parts of the country, if you install anything metal, you're asking for it to rust, right? And so, I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that the main answer to that question is I would defer to your local pros, because it doesn't really matter if I said to you, hey, there's this new product and it's made out of the same products that makes up this cup, and it never rusts, and it's super rugged, and it has a very low carbon footprint. It's biodegradable, and it's just an amazing product. but then no one in your area installs that product, well, it doesn't really matter how great it is. You can't find anybody to put it in anyway, you know? Ryan says, I want an all-in-one heat pump that does both heating, cooling for the home and water heating like in Europe, but sold here in the USA. I know we have combo boilers, but those run on gas or oil mostly. Ryan, stay tuned, and I'll just leave it at that. Stay tuned, my friend. Airrex says, I'm also having a problem finding HVAC companies out here in Southern California wanting to do a heat load calculation. Know any references or a way out this way? Eric, are you actually in LA or are you somewhere else in Southern California? Let me know the answer to that. Ryan says, should I have install a couple vents to blow air in my unconditioned attic or just rely on the flex duct insulation? Ryan, have you had someone tell you to do that? I would say generally it's pretty inefficient to blow conditioned air in an unconditioned attic. But, you know, I mean, if you've had a couple people tell you that, a couple pros tell you that for one reason or another, you know, I don't know. I mean, that's interesting that you're even asking that. Eric says, also, even though an HVAC company's licensed, is there a way to verify that actual installers that show up are certified and up to snuff? In Virginia there is, but I don't know about California, pal. Other than, I mean, you should be able to ask them. I will tell you that it's not uncommon for companies to hold licenses and the employees not. So that's not uncommon. In fact, I've got employees that are very, very qualified, and could probably own their own business and do very well. But they work with us and they do not hold any licenses, for one reason or another. So I don't know if that answers your question. Maybe that does not give you the warm fuzzies, but I will say that that's not uncommon in all states. Arch says, any news on point of purchase rebates for replacing old heat pumps? I contacted a state senator's office and they are going to get back to me, but won't be holding my breath. Arch, when you say point of purchase rebates, I'm curious what exactly you're talking about. If you're talking about a rebate that's applied instantly, those exist. In fact, that's how we do them at Griffin Air. So there's no mailing in, there's no, none of that. It's an instant rebate that is applied. And then we as a company, after the job is done, register it on a website and Daikin sends us the rebate. But, if you're talking about something else, let me know. Eric says an HVAC company said that metal ducts also attract heat. Well, maybe. I mean, I'm not sure. I've never heard that. I mean, I'm not saying they don't attract heat, but I don't know that should play a role in your decision making there. Ryan says, what's the difference between black flex duct and silver con? Do they sweat differently or any differences at all? There are certain flex products that have they have certain proprietary technologies. So we've had certain products on the market say that they can do one thing or another, be better at one thing or another than another. I'll say this, the ones that are black, at least the ones that we get, are lower quality. It almost kind of reminds me of like a really good trash bag plastic on the outside of that insulation, whereas the silver kind, which is what we get, is more of the consistency of, I don't even know how to what to compare it to. It's like a thin but strong. I don't even know what to compare it to. It's like a vinyl, sort of. but, you know, it doesn't, it rips easy if you cut it, but you're not going to get in there and just, you know, open up a hole easily, you know. So if you need to cut it or you need to, you know, splice it or something, you know, usually just a simple knife, you just run it in there and it, you know, is easy to work with as far as that goes. But it's a little more rugged, I would say, than say a, you know, a cheap plastic. Eric, unfortunately, I don't know anybody in Orange County. If you were in LA, I do know a guy. Or actually, I know two guys, but I don't know anybody out your way. I can tell you that it's not uncommon for, you know, there are companies out there that will do third-party heat load calculations. But, you know, I'll say this too. There are certain parts of the country that if humidity is not a big problem, then heat load calculations aren't as big of a deal. Does that mean that they're useless? No. I mean, I think every house, no matter the environment, has a threshold of this is how much heating and cooling that the home needs, and anything above that would be just something extra you need to pay for. But the problem becomes if this is where you need to be in a humid, say Florida, for example, and you actually install an air conditioner that's up here, well, now it's not running long enough. It's going to cool the space really fast, not remove enough humidity, and that's when you start to hear folks have humidity issues and then other problems like mold. And so I know Arch lives in an area in Arizona where they could probably throw a 10-ton system in a home that only needs 2 tons. And because of low humidity, he'll just cool the space down really fast. And then that, you know, and he just has a big honking air conditioner. It's not going to be a problem, or not usually. So yeah. Tech Junkie says, if a pro tells you to blow air outside conditioned space, they are absolutely not a pro. Tech Junkie keeping it real. Emery says, why are my supply vents sweating? There's a couple reasons or a couple things that can cause that, Emery. If it's in the floor, or usually it's the ceiling. If you're having that issue in the ceiling and you got vents, then it might need the boot. That's what we call it, the boot, which is the part, or, you know, where the duct blows out right there where the vent is, may need to be insulated a little better. And then the other thing is sometimes sealing around that boot. So imagine if you have a hot attic, you've got a boot sitting there, and then it's not sealed where there's actually YouTube videos on this. If you search it, you know, if you just search vents sweating or registers sweating, and it's not even one that I've done, but guys will show where you need to actually take some sort of caulk or some sort of material and seal around that boot, because hot air from the attic is escaping into the home right around the boot where cool air is coming out, and that's what's creating that condensation. Tech Junkie says a heat load calculation is much more than for humidity. They can really be used for comfort, noise, overall, and running costs, and can and will directly affect your equipment life. I don't disagree with that. I was just saying that, you know, when humidity is an obstacle, say in a humid state such as Florida, the issues that you could have if you oversize the equipment. Ryan says Daikin did sell the Daikin All-Thermo all-in-one system in the USA. There is a video on it from Baron Green Team YouTube channel from 2015. Looks like a nice system. Wonder why they stopped selling. Probably wonder why they stopped selling it. I don't know anything about that, Ryan, to be honest with you. That's interesting though. Arch says a neighbor just had a 5-ton Rheem heat pump installed on their roof, which looked too big for the size of their house. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. For some reason, I'm sorry to laugh, but for some reason, I'm just picturing this like tiny little house that's like, you know, 600 square feet or 400 square feet with this 5-ton honking, you know, package unit on top. So anyway, I think that's, I don't know why that just kind of caught me off guard. Eric says an HVAC company I met with later said they started a heat load calculation on my house, and since they couldn't get it to 90% efficiency, he didn't want to even do the job at my house. That is, I don't even know what that means, Eric. I don't know what he's saying. A heat load calculation is a heat load calculation. So if he's saying that he can't get it, if your house gets above 90, so like here in Virginia, if you do the heat load calculation, and you are trying to get, most heat load calculations here in Virginia are meant to get the house to 75 degrees on a 95 degree day. And that's the math, or at least this is the thought process. Now, is that always going to be ideal? Is that, no, it's not. But that is, the kind of the rule when they're doing their heat load calculations. And so I don't know if that's the case in all parts of the country. That's just what I've been told, when the guys are doing the heat load calculations for us here locally. Heat load has nothing to do with efficiency. That's in the ductwork and quality of install quality. 5 ton is always too big. AC Systems Service, Kevin. If you oversize here in Florida, you're going to make a sick home. What part of Florida are you, Kevin? Just out of curiosity. Arch says that house looks to be around 1,800 square feet. Yeah, I can tell you, Arch, here in Virginia, that would be 5 tons would be pretty big for an 1,800 square foot house. Tech Junkie says cools 1,000 square foot home in the Sahara Desert to 32 degrees in 17 seconds. Heck with your air dryer and toupee. That's pretty good. That was a good one. Emery says you don't want oversized AC in a humid environment because it won't run long enough to pull the humidity out. Very true. Very, very true. Some of you guys have been joining us every week for a while now, and I feel like you could run this show. Some of you guys are pretty smart folks when it comes to heating and air. I feel like now whenever someone's new and they jump in our chat with a question or two, it's usually pretty obvious. Oh, here's somebody new, some new fresh questions, right? Broward County, South Florida. Broward County, Florida. Says that's near Fort Lauderdale. Yeah, that's definitely a humid area. I was just in Port Canaveral a couple weeks ago, but that looks like that's still pretty far from you. Probably a good hour and a half, probably up the interstate, maybe 2 hours, maybe more. Maybe like 3 hours. Yeah. Okay, cool. Tech Junkie says, I tried doing it every week, but the wife said no. I'll ask the girlfriend next time. Tech Junkie's in rare form tonight. What are the big factors that go into heat load calculation? What are the big factors? Well, I would say the size of the house, the space plays a role. The R value of the insulation, other things like windows and the space, what it's going to be used for plays a role, right? So if you've got a commercial space where lots of people, number of people plays a role. A lot of residential applications, I've seen guys do heat load calculations and they'll literally write how many people are meant to be in one particular space versus another. And so a space where folks are going to congregate more on the regular. There are times when guys are doing heat load calculations, they'll literally ask, what is this space going to be used for? That plays a role. How big the appliances are, how many appliances are there? If you've got a house that's got, we've got a few houses near us where the folks are very well to do and they've got more than one kitchen in their house. So they've got more than one fridge, right? I feel like the average redneck Virginia house, they're going to have more than one fridge anyway. I feel like a lot of our customers, and I have family they'll have a fridge in the kitchen. They got a fridge out in the garage. They've got a fridge in the basement. You know, one fridge is where they keep the beer. One fridge is where they keep the freezer. They use that for, to keep certain things frozen or whatever. But all that plays a role, Tech Junkie says I have 2 fridges. I have a bunch of small fridges in my house. I have a small fridge in my shop. I've got a small fridge in my office here. So I've got probably technically 4 or 5 different fridges, but only one big one, which is in the kitchen. But yeah. Let's see. Eric says, with ducts, an HVAC company said they would go with larger ducts than my current old asbestos ones they're going to remove. I told him if I read the ducts are too large, it could lend to short cycling. Eric, if you actually do have asbestos in your home, make sure someone that is certified to remove that removes it. And I wouldn't be home when they come and I know that they are going to be removing asbestos. That's one of those things like, I remember hearing old timers that would argue over whether or not smoking is good or bad for you. I've been smoking for a number of years and I ain't got cancer. Asbestos is nothing you want to play around with, Ryan says, can you say 24 or 25 or are they further out? One of the products is, I think, very soon that I'll be able to do a video on. In fact, one product in particular, they have already announced, and I've got a video that we are working on. It should be out in the next day or two on a new technology that Daikin is offering, which is really, it's crazy. It's long overdue as well. I can't wait for you guys to see that video. Let's see. I have 2 fridges and I have a deep freezer as well. Tech Junkie. I feel like you and I would get along pretty well in real life, pal. Kevin says, always ask if any changes to the home are planned, such as new windows, etc. That's a great point, Kevin. We have had customers say, yeah, I'm building onto my house, but let's just go ahead and throw that system in there. And every time I've heard of folks doing stuff like that, then they find out later that the customer never did build onto their house and they're having issues and all these things. That's something that we will not do at Griffin Air unless they do a communicating inverter system. We might bend a little. We might bend a little, but yeah, I've heard horror stories from stuff like that, especially when folks don't plan ahead very well. Looks like we've got about 24, 25 people in here. I don't know who's on YouTube and who's on Facebook. It doesn't tell me, but most of you guys are usually on YouTube. As we start to wrap up, if you're one of those 24 people, do me a favor, wherever you are located in the country, if you know a good heating and air company local to you, share them in the chat. Share who they are and where they're located. We're going to give some shout outs to some really good companies and, don't leave me hanging on that. So if you know a good heating and air company, drop their name in our chat here. Tech Junkie says, I'm pretty easygoing like Jello. I love Jello. Eric says, you don't get this figure by not eating Jello, right? Eric says, should I still have the ducts that are left in the walls cleaned after the old asbestos ducts are removed? If the ducts that are in your walls have asbestos, Eric, have those removed too. Cut those walls open and get that out of there. But to answer your question, I have no idea. I haven't seen them. But you may not have either. Have somebody run a camera, and that might play a role. Looks like a few more folks just joined us. If you know a good heating and air company, drop it in the chat. Drop their name and where they're located in the country. You might be able to, do them a favor, give them a shout out, and somebody in your area may just see this. Bob says natural shading like trees can change your heat load results if the tree dies? That's another good point. Those are all things that folks, sometimes it just takes a little common sense. You know, you pull up to the house and it looks like, these trees might be gone soon, right? That's all things that folks need to consider. Gary says, always a great time, Josh. See you and the gang next week. Thanks, Gary. You were a little quiet tonight, pal. Hope you're doing well. I wanted to end tonight's show as we wrap up with something that I wanted to let you guys know. I've got some news coming over the next couple weeks. I don't want to go into it now, but some news that will affect what we're doing here in a way. And so I hate always being cryptic, but it is a little early, but I do have some big news to share that I can't wait to share with you guys, especially those of you that join us every week, like Arch and Gary and Bob, Ryan, Emery, Tech Junkie. Tech Junkie says, is your wife pregnant? No, she's not. But you know, I am excited, and I can't wait to share a bit of news. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be sharing some really big news for me, and it's going to affect our show and things as well. The show's not going away, so it's not bad news. But I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys. Ryan says, company shout out from Charlotte area to be continued. I'll let you all know next week. I can't wait, Ryan. I've been on the edge of my seat for a while now, and I want to hear, number one, how good they are, but this other YouTuber, maybe we can give them a shout out at the end of the day. Highland Enforcer says Schaefer Heating and Cooling LLC in Hillsboro, Ohio. So shout out to Schaefer. Highland thinks pretty highly of you guys, and if you are in the Hillsboro area, check out Schaefer. Highland is giving them a shout out. Eric says, I've got only one return vent downstairs in my 2-story home. Companies recommended adding one upstairs, which I agree with, but should I keep the one downstairs since it pulls from the cavity inside the home? Well, Eric, I think there's exceptions to every rule, right? So I haven't seen your home. I can't definitively answer this question, but I can say this, that when it comes to return air, the more the better. The more the better, generally. Not always, but generally. I haven't been in too many homes where, I think that Steve and Tech Junkie could probably attest to this. I haven't been in too many homes where I stepped foot in the door and go, man, there is just too much return air in this house. It just doesn't happen very often. So anyway, so it looks like we shouted out Schaefer. And again, just to reiterate, we do got some big news coming for you guys. We're going to wrap up with that. I appreciate you guys and your support. If you have not subscribed to our channel, please do. We've got some new and exciting stuff coming up. And I'm not just saying that. That's not just, hoo-ha. I've got some new, pretty cool videos coming down the pike, including new technologies. That one I was just telling you guys about, that video should be out over the next day or two. So, if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do. Looks like we've got another question or two that just popped in here. Ryan says, I'd like to be able to have a call-in feature or join a video chat on here to ask more detailed questions. The character limitation on here sucks and causes typos. Great show. Ryan, I've considered that, and maybe someday we'll figure something out for that. And I don't know, maybe sooner than later. Maybe we'll figure out, especially you guys that join us every week, if you have the ability, if you got the computer and the technology, the camera, and you want to come on here, or maybe we'll do a some sort of call-in show. I don't know how I would do that right now, but it does kind of sound fun, hopefully we can figure that out. So Tech Junkie says never too much return. Yeah, call-in feature and special guests like me. We actually have some special guests as well. Some other folks that we're going to be inviting on the show soon. Part of it is, I'll tell you guys this. A lot of the folks that I have talked to that about coming on our show, they get scared. They get scared about coming on a live show. They're afraid. I can tell you that, whenever I've talked to folks from big companies, they're scared that some of you guys are going to ask them questions that, or start to berate them. And I've gotten that feeling a few times. So I think that, if I do ever get one of these guys on the show, what we might do is just take a select few questions and just, do it that way. So that way, instead of reading everything or trying to read everything like I do, and we might be able to do it that way. So Kevin says, I love Curtis. I think you're talking about, the YouTube channel HVAC Guy, I think, cause I think his name is Curtis. And if he ever sees this, if he'd like to come on the show, I'd love to have him. He's got some great content for, any of you guys that are interested in watching more of the behind the scenes where guys actually take cameras with them when they go, to the house and so on. That's kind of what his, content is about. So, and Tech Junkie, yeah, maybe we can work something out where you come on the show too. So, all right, guys, have a great week. Make it a great week. We'll see you back next Tuesday, 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central. Find out what that time is for you, and we'll be back here live answering questions and sharing the latest in the HVAC industry. See you then, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.